Hello, welcome to More Yoga with me, Emily. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you're having a great day, and if you're not, that you will feel better after this. So, I thought today what we would work towards is bow pose, which for some people comes super naturally, particularly children who are limber and whose lever lengths are quite long compared to their body. Um, Less so for adults, right? Particularly if you're tight through the hip flexors and the chest and the shoulders, even the quadriceps, although they do come into it at the final stages of bow as like a strengthening rather than a stretch. But we'll get into all of those places first so that hopefully you can access a deeper bow pose or even access a bow pose. Now, bow pose takes a lot of strength through the back line of the body. So extensors through the spine, glutes, hamstrings, and it's important that you don't ever work through pain. And it's one thing to say that, it's another thing to actually follow that advice. Like even me yesterday, I was doing a workout at home, and halfway through, my foot really started to hurt. And did I stop? No. So don't do what I do. Do what I say, right? Pain is not a good thing for your body. Discomfort, however, tension, these are really interesting areas to play with, right? Both on the mat and off the mat. Okay, enough of that. Let's start lying down. I'm going to have one of these little guys just for later on in the practice. If you have something like a pillow or a folded up blanket, that could be useful. So, and once you're on your back, as always, maybe there's a few wiggles that you need to get out today or a little yawn. And then set up however you need to set up. Right? It could be with your legs extended. Maybe your arms are beside you, palms facing up. Maybe your low back feels a little bit tight like this today, in which case you could take the feet mat width apart with the knees bent and let the knees hang in toward each other, just so you don't have to use any muscular activation to be here. Some of you might prefer to take the soles of the feet together and the knees wide in a butterfly pose, just going wherever you need to go. And for a few breaths, inhale through your nose. Exhale, sigh. The breath away. A couple more. And then continue breathing however you need to, whether it's in and out through your nose or your mouth. Notice how your breath is flowing. If it feels really open and spacious, then great. Maybe you notice some sticky or choppy spots along the way, in which case also great. But maybe you try to lengthen through those parts just to smooth the breath out a little bit more. And then bring your focus to your low back and the base of your ribs. Can you try to breathe into those spaces a little bit more? So rather than allowing the belly to puff up to the sky, can you think almost of pressing the low back into the earth and then widening the rib cage with every inhale? And it's a little bit bizarre if you're not used to breathing like this. But we're just using the breath to massage the back line of the body a little bit more. Last couple of breaths here. And then when you feel ready, start to bring a little bit of movement back to your body. It could be really small to start with. Might be a big, yawning morning stretch. Whatever you need. Until eventually you're ready to draw your knees into your chest and take a little rock from side to side. And you might draw your knees really close to your chest to start with, as close as feels comfortable on your body. Massaging out, the lumbar spine here. Maybe you start to take the knees further away from you, maybe even arm's distance away, and you're getting a little bit more into the pelvis and sacrum here as you rock from side to side. Right, just seeing if there's a position or a spot on the back that feels like it could do with that a little bit of extra massage. And then pause in the center, shake things out a little bit. Let's bring the feet to the floor. Keep your knees bent. So we're setting up for a bridge pose. So the feet will be hip width apart-ish, close enough into your bum that maybe you can tickle your heels with your fingertips when you reach around your bum. Some people set up with their feet really quite wide in bridge, and that's fine, but it's most anatomically supportive, right, if your feet are hip width apart. So the feet aren't going to be touching, and they're not going to be too wide. Take a little loop of your shoulders onto your back or the shoulder blades, so the heart will lift up a little bit here naturally. You might have your arms extended beside you, palms flat to the floor, or maybe you choose to bend the elbows and take robot arms, right, whatever feels best or most supportive for you. And then really pressing into the heels on your inhale, start to lift your pelvis and your spine up toward the sky. And as you exhale, lower back down. So we're going to move in and out of bridge for a few breaths. Inhale to lift, exhale to lower. So we are warming up really the back line of the body, the glutes, the hamstrings, even the spinal extensors to a lesser extent. And the quads work here a little bit as well to help extend at the knee. Next time that you're up, pause there. Maybe you walk out onto the outside edge of the shoulders. You can clasp your hands behind your back. Maybe you can still graze your heels here. And essentially, right, this pose, bridge, if you're on your belly, is bow pose, or if you're on your knees, is camel pose. So blueprint this position. Squeeze your bum a little bit more, and then think of pressing your feet away from you. You're going to feel that fire up onto the tops of the legs. And then think of dragging your heels back toward you, really starting to feel those hamstrings. And then can you find somewhere that's in between those two? So almost both of those actions at the same time, even though that's impossible. Squeeze the bum a little bit more. Last breath. Okay, come back onto your back, slowly lowering down. Take the feet mat width apart. Allow your knees to hang in towards the center a little bit. This is one of the really great releases for the low back that we can get. And then draw your knees in toward your chest. Option 1 is just to stay here, holding your knees or shins. Option 2 is to maybe clasp your hands or interlace your hands over top of your shins, getting a little bit more compression here. Option 3, to gently curl your nose toward your knees without gripping or tension through the neck and shoulders. Last option is maybe press the shins up to the sky so you get that nice deep flexion or rounding through the low back. And then slowly come back to the earth, little rock from side to side. You might grab the backs of your thighs here and rock and roll up and down your spine. Go shoulder blades to sit bones. Really play with it if you want to. Maybe it doesn't feel great, so you roll to one side, use your hands, and then we'll press up to hands and knees. So taking your time to get there. Eventually setting up with your knees underneath your hips. Toes can be tucked or untucked behind you. Hands outer shoulder width apart or wider. Fingers spread nice and wide. And we'll start to move through cat and cow. So inhale to lift the tailbone, hollow through the lower back, wrap the shoulder blades toward each other. And then exhale, tuck your tailbone under, start to round through your spine. Inhale, lift the tailbone, hollow into cow. Exhale, tuck your tailbone around into cat. So a few more of these undulations on your own time, on your own breath. And if there's any other natural movement that would feel good here, feel free to add on a little wiggle of the hips from side to side maybe, or some barrel rolls through the chest and shoulders. And if the low back is feeling tight these days, if you send your hips back toward your heels while rounded in cat, that can feel like a great release. You'll hear me going on about the low back quite a bit today, and it's because we have not a tendency, but if anything is going to get tweaked while in bow pose, it's going to be the low back. So we want to support it as much as we can and release it. Last little breath here. And then come back to center. A little draw of belly button to spine. Okay, I'm going to turn to face you. And if you're using any padding underneath your knees for extra support today, then you might bring something underneath your left knee. And on your inhale, step or sweep your right leg forward to come up to half kneeling. So let's start to get into those hip flexors a little bit. Back out of the hips to start with. Hug your legs toward each other. Really squeeze the bum on the back leg. Belly button to spine. Shoulder blades on your back. You know where we're going. Maintain all this. Start to shift into that front knee. You might gently rest your palms on the front thigh. Back toes could be tucked or untucked. And the more you squeeze your bum on the back leg, the more you will feel it into those hip flexors. You might even press the palms away from you to send the shoulders back, getting even a deeper opening through the hip flexors. Yeah. I don't know, I'm imagining that you're doing it and that I can see the release in your face. Last couple of breaths here. And then slowly back out of the hips a little bit. Right away, we're just going to switch to the opposite side. So you might bring your hands down first and swing your right leg back. Move the padding. Right, just transitioning to half kneeling on the opposite side in whatever way works best, right? Find those activations. So the hug of the legs toward the center line, squeeze the bum, belly button to spine, shoulder blades down and back, and then shift forward. So really, really active release for those hip flexors. Now you might have to shift more forward. You might have to squeeze your bum a little bit more to get into those hip flexors, right? Every day is different. For me, today, I have to go a little bit deeper on this side than I normally would, which, yay, maybe I'm not as tight as I normally am, but it's different, right? Every day. You might press your palms away from you on that front thigh to get even more extension at the hip. Really squeeze the bum on that back leg. Last few breaths here. Okay, and then slowly back out of it. Bring your hands back to the floor. Come back, hands and knees. I'm going to move my block off to the side. A little wiggle or stretch. You can stay here, moving and grooving through cat and cow for a couple breaths if you'd like to. If you want to join me for a little bit more vigor, tuck your toes, exhale, lift the hips up and back, downward facing dog. And if you're with me in down dog, you could pedal your heels toward the floor or wag your tail from side to side. So in downward facing dog, I never want to see you rounding through the spine so that you can get the heels to the floor. Right? I want to extend through the spine, reach those sit bones back to where the back wall meets the ceiling. And your heels might never touch the floor. Your knees can be bent. It's all about the spine here, right? And the length. Hug the upper arm bones toward each other. Last couple breaths. All right, bend your knees, look forward. Exhale, walk, step, or hop to the top edge of your mat, standing forward fold. You could bring your elbows to your knees or thighs if you'd like a little bit more support today. You could clasp opposite elbows with hands if you'd like more traction through the spine. You could be still. You could move. Right? You know your body better than I do. So go where you need to go. And then check in with your knees. Make sure they're not knocking, so they're not caving in toward each other ever so slightly. Track them out toward the baby toe edges of your feet. Last couple breaths here. Okay, release your hands, fingertips to shins or the earth. Inhale, little partway lift, belly bend to spine. Exhale, let it all go. 2 more. And then bend your knees, head heavy, arms heavy. Slowly start to roll up to standing. 1 vertebra at a time. Slow as you need to go until you come up to the top, maybe a couple loops of your shoulders, up, back, and down. A little wiggle, noodle, or release. Okay, let's just come to feet hip width apart. We're going to do just a slight little spinal extension, opening through the chest and shoulders. Hug the legs toward each other. Little buoyancy on your knees here, right? So they're not locked out. Squeeze your bum, belly bend to spine. Bring your palms to your pelvis, right? So the top of the pelvis in the back. Hug the elbows, the shoulder blades toward each other. Maybe you start to lift your heart up to the sky a little bit here. Try not to just break through the back of the neck, right? Option to stay here, or if you'd like a little bit more, think of pressing your hips forward as the heart lifts up even more. Really squeeze the bum. That's the stability, the biggest stability you're going to get here for the low back. Some of you might interlace your hands and glide your knuckles down. Right, so long as the low back stays supported. Last breath here. And then inhale, come up, shake it out a little bit. Okay, we're going to go into a quad stretch. So if your balance is super gnarly today, you might want to find a wall or something that you can hold on to. But it's all good. Send your weight over to your left foot. Little buoyancy on that supporting knee. Belly bend to spine. And then pick up that right knee. Now first we're just going to bring it forward. You might interlace your hands over top of the shin. Maybe you draw that thigh or knee closer toward you without that hip hiking up. Maybe you stay here. Maybe you start to bend a little bit more through the supporting knee, round through the spine. Bring your nose toward your knee. With the change of focus of the eyes, it gets really wobbly. And then inhale, come up. Ooh, kick your heel to your bum. Grab the outside or the inside edge of the foot, whatever works best for you. Hug the legs toward each other. Send your kneecap down on that right leg. Wrap your shoulder onto your back, belly bend to spine, squeeze the bum. And the more that you're able to pull your heel in toward your bum, the more you're going to feel that release through the quadriceps, as well as the hip flexors, right? One of your quads acts as a hip flexor. Maybe you stabilize with that left arm, or if you're feeling stable, maybe you bring that arm back too and grab your foot. Last couple breaths here. Okay, slowly, gently release. Shake it out a little bit. A few hip circles, one direction, and then the other direction. And then we'll switch the opposite side. Weight goes to your right foot. And then find your balance. Start to pick up that left knee. Maybe you interlace your hands over top of that shin. Right? Option to stay here. Or maybe you play with rounding through the spine a little bit. Bringing your nose toward your knee. Yikes! And then he'll slowly come back up. Woo! If you fall out, you fall out. It's all good. Then kick your left heel to your bum. You can grab the foot or the ankle from the outside or the inside edge. Inside edge is cool because it's really hard to round through the shoulder. Outside edge gives you a little bit more space. Okay, hug the legs toward each other. Left kneecap goes down toward the floor. Shoulder blades on the back. Hug the heel in toward your bum. You could be counterbalancing, right, with your right arm. This is essentially, right, dancer's pose. Or maybe, if you're feeling really stable, you bring the right arm behind you. Press your hips forward slightly as you think of almost pulling the knee back ever so slightly. Squeeze the bum. Last couple of breaths here. Okay, and then gently release your foot. A couple hip circles, one direction, and then the other. That's enough standing. Let's come down to the earth. Inhale up to the sky. Exhale, forward fold. Fingertips to shins. Inhale, little parkway lift. Exhale, fold. Bend your knees, plant your hands. Come back to hands and knees. Okay, little wiggle or shake or cat and cow. And then either scoot your knees back a little bit, depending where you are on your mat, and then shift your weight forward into your hands for plank from the knees. Maybe you tuck your toes, lift the legs up. Plank from the toes, last couple breaths. Just getting everything fired up. And then come down to your knees. Shake it out a little bit. Swing to your hips on one side so that your feet can come in front of you. Plant your feet. Bring your hands behind you. Fingertips pointing back. And then wrap the shoulders, the elbows toward each other. Lift your heart up to the sky. Now, if you'd like to make this deeper, you can either walk your hands back or, shift your hips forward. And then lift the heart up to the sky, really squeezing the shoulder blades toward each other. Think of pressing your index knuckle mounds into the earth. So you will probably feel this down the upper arm as well toward the elbow, getting into the biceps, but also through the chest and the shoulders. One more breath here. And then bend your elbows. Shake it out a little bit. You can either roll down onto your back and then flip onto your belly, or just kind of, make your way onto your belly the least graceful way that you can. All right, here we go. We're going to be doing 4 sets to work into bow, all right? So I'm going to take it easy. Little wiggle of the hips from side to side. Untuck your toes. Press the tops of the feet into the floor, so much so you feel your kneecaps lift away from the earth. Send your tailbone to the back wall. Feel your belly button engage toward your spine and wrap your shoulder blades onto your back. Hug the legs toward each other. Squeeze the bum. On your inhale, lift your heart forward and up. Baby cobra. And exhale, lower back down. So let's do a few of these. Inhale to lift up. Exhale to lower down. Your hands could hover if you wish. You might take them out onto the wood and press up a little bit higher, but really, really try not to tweak the low back. So keep the glutes clenched the entire time, hugging the legs toward each other. And I like to picture it that from the hip bones down, it's like you're anchored to the seafloor, and from the hip bones up, it's like you're seaweed flowing in the tides of the waves. Last 2 breaths here. Really great strengthening work for the back line of the body. And on your exhale, come all the way down. Whew. One cheek to the earth. Deep belly breaths to release through your lower back. Okay, come back to center. Get the leg activations going. Hug the legs toward each other. Tailbone to the back wall, belly button to spine. Inhale, reach the heart forward and up. Pause here. Some of you might stay here in baby cobra. Some of you might reach your arms back along behind you. Palms up or down, whatever feels best. Maybe you stay here. Maybe you start to reach your feet, your legs so far back that they de-weight as well. Hug everything back into the center line, and then reach your toes, your fingertips further back. Back the neck stays long, so don't break with the chin. Last few breaths here. Squeeze the bum. Maybe you inhale, lift everything up a little bit higher. Exhale, release all the way down. Opposite cheek to the earth to balance out your neck. Deep belly breaths, or a little wiggle from side to side. Okay, set 3 out of 4. Come back to the center. Now at any point, you can just go back to baby cobras or whatever feels best for you. Otherwise, get all the activations going. Hug the legs toward each other. Inhale the heart forward and up. You might reach one arm forward and kick one heel to your bum, coming into half bow pose. Or kick both heels toward your bum. Grab the ankles or feet or whatever works best. And then hug everything into the center line. From here, start to kick your feet into your hands to lift your chest up. Pull back on the feet with the hands to lift the thighs. Really squeeze the bum so you don't crank into the low back. This is bow pose. Back the neck stays long. If you feel anything in the low back, back out of it. Come down lower. Last breath here. Exhale, release all the way down. Woo-hoo. All right. Couple deep belly breaths. And then come back to center. Last set. So many stages or options along the way. You go where works best for you. Get all the activations going. Hug the legs toward each other. Tailbone to the back wall, belly button to spine. Inhale, lift up. Maybe you kick your heels to your bum. Come up into your bow pose. Now you can stay here or get a little playful rock from side to side. Maybe you roll all the way over to one side. And then inhale back to center. And then maybe all the way over to the other side without knocking over your bookshelf. And then back to center, lift everything up. Exhale, release all the way down. Awesome work, everybody. Okay, roll over onto your back. So that was a lot of opening through the front body. Let's get a little bit of flexion, a little bit of rounding through the back body. So take your feet mat width apart, let your knees hang in toward each other. Or if you have something that you could bring underneath your pelvis, lift the hips up and bring it underneath the pelvis. Not under the low back, but under the pelvis. And this just helps release any tension that might have built up. A few slow breaths. Allowing your breath and your heart rate to slow down. And then start to draw your knees toward your chest. Feeling a really great release through the low back, hopefully. Same thing that we did at the start. Maybe you just stay here. Maybe you interlace your hands over top of your shins. Maybe you curl your nose toward your knees. Maybe you press your shins up to the sky. And then slowly come back down to the floor. Bring your feet to the earth. If you have something underneath your hips, remove it out to the side. And let's end with a twist. So a little rock from side to side. Right arm goes out to the side. Maybe you shift your hips right a little bit. Exhale. Lower your knees to the left. Just a few breaths here. We did a lot of flexion and extension through the spine today. Not so much lateral flexion extension, but that's getting a little bit of rotation at the end. Just helps keep the spine happy, healthy. Last breath here. And then inhale back to center. Reset your pelvis and spine. And then exhale, lower your knees to the opposite side. And then inhale back to center. One last time, draw your knees toward you. Take them wide toward your shoulders or armpits. This is already a really great place to neutralize the low back. Maybe you stay here. Maybe you kick your feet to the sky for happy baby. You could grab the backs, the thighs, or somewhere along the legs, the ankles, or the feet. Try not to round through your spine as much as possible. Just keep it neutral. You could rock a little bit from side to side. Last 2 breaths here. And then start to think about where you would like to go for your rest. You could be flat on your back, legs bent or straight in Shavasana. You could rest on your side or in child's pose, which might feel really great, or maybe a seated meditation. And there's no rush to get there. But once you've found your pose of rest, for 3 breaths, inhale through your nose. Exhale, sigh. Your breath. Couple more. And then let go of your breath control. Return to your natural breath, slow and sweet. Notice if you're holding any last muscle gripping or tension somewhere in the body. And if so, can you let that go as well? And stay here longer if you can. 5 or 10 minutes. Thank you so much for joining me today. Namaste.